About 10 minutes in, I'm still getting situated when we pick up pocket kings on the button. At least I think I'm the button, because we see that big button looking thing in the top left. That's actually the bomb pot button. I'm in the small blind. With the session just starting, me playing in a big game, getting pocket kings and trying to get the camera set up all at once, I'm a little distracted. Under the gun +1 raises to 55. I played with this opponent the day before and know that he's a wild guy. He also knocked Doug out of the main event a few days prior after calling a 3-bet with 8-3 offsuit and flopping trips. I must avenge Doug. I 3-bet to 160. I would have made it 200 if I had realized that I'd be playing this from out of position. The opponent calls, we're going heads up to the flop. It's reminiscent of what the judges gave me for my mime act during my high school talent show. That's right, all 10s. The act was sick, I was in a box and everything. We flop an interesting full house. If my opponent has a pocket pair below 10s, he's drawing dead to run a runner perfect. I down bet to 125 in order to string the opponent along as if I'm walking the dog with a yo-yo. The opponent complies and makes the call. I'm already trying to think about how I can extract maximum value throughout the rest of the hand. The turn is the 6 of diamonds. It's a great card. I don't want to see anything above a 10 come out, not even a king. I increase my sizing to 475. Under the gun +1 isn't deterred by my bet. Only about 10 seconds go by before he calls. As we're getting further into this hand, I'm suspecting more and more that my opponent has exactly queens or jacks. Or quads. If he flopped quads and I get stacked, I can live with that though. The river is the 4 of clubs. It's another card that doesn't change a damn thing. The dealer could have just put his business card out there instead. I'm gonna bet, and I'm gonna bet big to target worse pocket pairs. I make it 1500. I actually wouldn't have minded jamming for about 3,300 total. You can't really fold queens for that amount since that's the second best hand that I'll ever have other than 4 10s. Under the gun +1 is clearly distraught at the moment. He's not sure what to do. He has no phone a friend lifeline at his disposal. I'm rooting hard for a call, but maybe 1500 was a bit too greedy. Maybe it wasn't greedy enough. The opponent matches the bet. We show him the 2 cowboys. They're more than good. We never find out what under the gun +1 has as his cards are returned to the dealer face down. We're up over 2,000 immediately. We win back more from the opponent than he got from Doug's tournament buy-in. Doug has been completely avenged. It seems like we're up a lot. After all, it's an amount more than 200 big blinds. 20 minutes after that debacle, we pick up King 9 suited in the $10 blind. We'll just call it under the gun since we have 2 other players in the blinds to our right. Under the gun +1 straddles to 20. The button raises to 60. His name's Matt. I played with him a handful of times in Texas. He's maybe the best cash game player in town. With the straddler behind me, I'm treating this as if I'm in the small blind, and I 3-bet to 200. Had I had an opportunity to close the action, I would have just called the initial raise. Under the gun +1 doesn't see that I 3-bet and calls the 60. Once he realizes it's 200 to call, he wishes that he could have folded. It's another strange situation because he's not really supposed to be allowed to take his 60 back. Matt is a stickler for the rules and tries to clear up the confusion by chiming in. I don't want to win someone else's money that he genuinely put in as a mistake, so I want to try and let him know that if he folds and I win the pot, I'd give him back his $60, but I don't want to make it seem too much like I want the opponents to fold.
140 to call, 0 to fold. No, that's yours.
You called 60.
You called 60.
If I win, we'll see what happens. Yes.
I'll give you. Okay, now we're all just playing poker.
Under the gun +1 makes things simpler by calling. Matt calls as well. We're going 3 ways to the flop against someone who I think has a bad hand and someone who I think has something mediocre like a low or medium pocket pair, suited connectors, or suited Broadway cards aside from ace king or maybe even ace queen. The flop comes king queen 5 rainbow. We've got top pair and a backdoor straight flush draw. What's better is that I have a huge range advantage with 2 Broadway cards out there after 3-betting and only getting called. I'll have extremely strong hands like sets of kings and queens, as well as aces and ace king that my opponents almost definitely won't have. After under the gun +1 showed hesitation before ultimately calling the 3-bet for 140 more, it's unlikely that he'd even have a set of 5s, and probably won't have king queen, which are the only super strong hands that the button could have. With us having a king, there are only 2 combos of king queen suited that the button would have definitely called a 3-bet with. I suppose he probably would have called pre-flop with king queen offsuit as well, but that's still only a total of 6 king queen combos and 3 set of 5 combos that I need to be concerned about him raising me with. Because of that, I can sort of bet with impunity here. I make it 350. Under the gun +1 folds right away. The button is contemplating how he wants to proceed. Eventually he calls. It's down to heads up. The turn is the 8 of clubs. I would have preferred it to be a heart. Not a bad card though. At this point, it's tough to be sure if we're ahead or not. We're losing against a set of 5s, king queen, king jack, and king 10, but we're ahead of ace queen, ace 10, jack 10, perhaps queen jack and queen 10 suited type of hands as well. Maybe even some 10-9 or 7-6 suited hands also. I go very large with my sizing since I have the range advantage and good card removal against a lot of combos that are beating me. I bet 1200. This amount charges the button significantly for draws, particularly if he has clubs and doesn't want to fold. If the button has 2 pair or a set and happen to be trapping on the flop, I'd expect to hear from him right now. He just calls, making me think that he either has exactly 1 pair or some sort of strong draw. The river is the deuce of hearts, it's a complete blank. What's interesting about the board run out and the way that this hand has been played so far is that I don't think the opponent is going to want to put any more money in the pot regardless of what his actual holding is. If he has a missed draw, he won't be calling a bet, although if I check, he may jam for 3450 effective in a last-ditch effort to steal the pot from me. He's a good enough player to know that shoving on the river wouldn't make a ton of sense though, and I'll certainly check as a trap on occasion with really strong hands. If the button has something like ace-queen or queen-jack of clubs, he would surely check back. If he has king-jack or king-10, he'll be checking back as well since this pot has gotten large, and I probably wouldn't call a bet of his with anything worse. The button may call a small or medium-sized bet with king-jack or king-10, but he won't love it after I 3-bet and bet all 3 streets. It'd be only a bluff catcher. Since I anticipate only being up against holdings that can't call large bets, I consider turning my hand into a semi-bluff of sorts, in the sense that if I jam for 3450, I expect to be ahead half the time or more, but the hands that I put my opponent on that are beating me will almost for sure have to fold, so I'm bluffing him off of those. The opponent throws his cards into the muck immediately. I imagine that we had the best hand and didn't necessarily need to turn top pair into a bluff. It just all but guaranteed that we'd win the pot unless the opponent could find a difficult call, which is a slightly better 1 pair. Typically, I don't turn hands with value into big bluffs. This was just a unique situation in which I felt in the moment it was going to give us the victory a huge percentage of the time, particularly after everyone at the table saw me overbet for value on the river earlier with pocket kings after I 3-bet pre-flop there too. Matt is a great guy and is cool enough to share what he had for the vlog.
Jack 10.
Ace 10 of clubs. Yep.
We pick up queen jack suited in the cutoff. There's a $20 straddle on. Under the gun +1 limps in. The hijack calls as well. I raise to 100. The dude who I got earlier with pocket kings and who knocked Doug out of the tournament with 8-3 offsuit, 3 bets to 305. It folds back to me. My brother actually just landed in Austin to check out the lodge and hang out, so part of me wants to lock up a win for several thousand and head out without getting involved in any more big pots. I know that I shouldn't be making decisions based on that, so I call for 205 more. We're heads up in position. The flop comes 10-6-6 rainbow with 1 club. We don't have much except 2 overs and some backdoor draws. The big blind only bets 160. I'm getting 4-1. I call, hoping to improve, or perhaps I can steal this down the line. The turn is the 8 of spades. That gives us a gut shot straight draw. The big blind slows down and checks. This is a pretty good board for my 3-bet calling range. I can have quads, full houses, and trips, as well as hands like ace 10 and king 10. I take a stab at it for 425 in order to get the opponent to at least fold his ace high hands. The big blind calls pretty quickly. He could have an overpair and just checked for pot control. He may have continued betting with spades, so I don't think that it's very likely that he check called with a flush draw. The river is the 9 of spades, giving us the best possible straight. Now I'm really hoping that we're up against an overpair. The big blind checks again. If I had missed, I was considering bombing it as a bluff. No need to do that anymore. I bomb it for value. I make it 1500. The same price that I made it against him the last time that we tangled several hours ago. This player's had a rough day so far. Not only did I get the best of him earlier, some other people have gotten him as well, and now I've just made a backdoor straight against him in a 3-bet pot that's had betting on every street. If he calls, he's not going to like seeing queen jack. He doesn't call. Instead, he rips it all in for 3720. I wasn't expecting to see that. I feel like throwing up. It's just over 2200 more for me to call. I'm playing against a wild dude who stuck piles against certain people, and in certain situations, this is an easy fold. I'll still be up about $1,000 if I let this straight go. Still, it's difficult for me to put together what my opponent is trying to say with his river check shove. I don't even think that he's attempting to rep a flush. He's basically saying that he has a full house. There's only one full house combo that makes much sense to me.
So pocket 9s?
I've seen this guy make some aggressive plays, particularly in the 2-5 game that I played with him yesterday. In the back of my mind, I also had this text conversation that I had with my friends 20 minutes prior to this hand. We see my friend Nick Durkee say, "Don't play prevent defense, it doesn't work." With that thought swirling around, and against this opponent whose hand I can't quite piece together, I call. It turns out, I actually was able to piece his hand together. He has the exact one that I called out. 9s full of 6s for a river full house.
Alright. How much is it?
3720.
I can't tell you how badly this one hurts. I go from being up a decent amount to now being down 1300, or Hunter Sitchy when he raises to 125 from the button. This started out as a 5-10, 25-50 hand. I'm in the under the gun straddle. I'm having none of it. I put in an ill-advised 3-bet to 400. mostly because I'm feeling lucky and people are missing from the table, so we've got to either form a search party to bring them back, or we need to be fighting for pots more aggressively. The button calls, we're heads up out of position, the flop comes ace-6 with 2 clubs, we flop trips. I down bet to 300 in order to keep Hunter in with his pocket pairs or other hands that are drawing slim. The button calls, the turn is the jack of hearts. I check to see how confident the opponent is in his hand. If he checks back, I'll know for sure that we've got him beat. He does check, I doubt he'd do that with trips or better. The river is another jack, giving us a full house. If Hunter called my flop bet with a small or medium pocket pair, he may have gotten counterfeited, he won't be able to call a bet. The same is true if he has a missed flush draw. I check to feign weakness in order to induce a bluff. The button bet's 300. That's a cool sizing, but it's not going to stay that amount. I raised to 1500. Hunter snap folds what I'm guessing is complete air. This pot gets our stack back up to the 9K mark. I have a much better trip than I did in January. Not only do I make a straight flush and a 3-way all-in PLO double board bomb pot for piles, I see a royal flushed out on board, and I win all 5 of the sessions that I played to get $4,000 back of the money that I lost on my first trip. I still have about $11,000 to go to get even at this property, but I'm looking forward to the challenge.